Hi, I'm Cindy. If you've been following us, I'm from one of the canine coaches from Clovis Paws for Play in Clovis, California. And we're on day 4 of our Barking Mad with Cookies. So today we're going to talk about communication styles and different ways we communicate with our dogs and our dogs communicate with us. As humans, we have a tendency, we're very visual oriented and we're very vocal, and we tend to communicate with our words. Well, dogs don't have words the same way we do. If you've been around a dog breed like a Great Dane or a Great Pyrenees or a Newfoundland or some of the other, they tend to be larger breeds that do this more. I at least in my experience, they kind of go roar, 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 roar and talk like Scooby Doo, and that's a form of communication. And if you have been around it, it's very different than the or the other growls that you can be. But if you have a dog that's like a poodle or a border collie, they may have one tone in their bark: yap, 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 bark, 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 something along that nature. And we can actually work with them and increase their ways of communicating that bark. And what we're doing with this Barking Mad with Cookies, as you do this, you will notice your dogs um, needing to have that constant alert bark every single time they bark will change, and it will vary. From Nick has gone from he will go to the door and stare at the door to a low to let me know something is going on to a full-on barking episode. So which are farther and fewer between, but he's still a dog, and he that is how he, when he gets over the top excited, that's what happens. We can encourage communication by rewarding the barks that well, reward, it's going to sound weird, rewarding barking, but what you're doing is you're actually counter conditioning barking. And that's why it freaks so many people out when you say, yeah, you're going to give cookies for your dog barking. Yes, we are. But it does teach them that, oh, if I stop, the sooner I stop barking, the sooner I get my cookies and I feel better about it. So it works. And it also teaches them self-regulation and gets those barks under control.
And it leads to not rewarding the barking, but it leads to rewarding the stopping barking.
and it and it changes their emotional response, why they're barking in the first place. So
Exactly.
we're actually starting to go through barking challenge here a bit because Nick was doing really, really well, and then I got new neighbors, and the new neighbors have all the same trigger stuff that the neighbors did when I first moved here: smoking cigarettes, hanging out in the front yard, slamming their door, little kids screaming. So all of that is going on, and Nick is, and I can't control it because they're people and they need to do their people thing too. So I'm back to doing this counter conditioning again with Nick and teaching him that, yeah, it's okay. You don't need to worry about that. That kid is not your problem. Yes, they're annoying, but they're not your problem. Um, so that will also help him learn to self-regulate and get that even more than he already does. He's already really good. If he has something to say to me, generally speaking, if he's in a relaxed state of mind, it's generally a low burr. And I would much rather have that than to have a dog that doesn't know how to communicate. So
Well, and there's a big difference between the low that Nick or Azul do being having that trained and the low of a dog that's been punished for barking and is now growling because they're afraid to do anything else. You can see in the
the,
body language and in the sound of it that it's a totally different
a very
which
different
which is
sound.
important.
And the other, it's also important to realize that if you're doing this and you're doing it with reward based training and behavior based training, what you're doing is you're actually giving, instead of, you're giving your dogs more tools to communicate. You're rewarding them. Like, as we go progress, as Nick progressed through this the first time, we never really stopped, but as we did the intense training the first time, Nick's ability to vocalize actually increased while the volume decreased, because he learned to control his barking, and he learned that if he stopped for just a second, the cookies came out quicker. And it got to the point where he would go to the door and he would just stare at the door, and I would reward him for staring at the door. And what that tells me is he's in a lower level emotional state. He's still aroused, but he's in a lower level state where he has a lot more self-control, and he's able to communicate to me the same thing he was with his full-on barking. There's someone on the other side of the door. I don't like the noise that's happening. Mom, make it stop. And that's really that's a form of communication, and that's kind of what the goal is. And then for us to be able to give them communication back yet of, yeah, it's okay, I know they're barking, I know they're making noise, I know you don't like it, this is how we're going to handle it. And it gives them more power, as opposed to if you punished your dog every time they went to the door, they're going to stop going to the door. But then the next time something really upsetting like that happens, they're not going to have a way to communicate with you to say, hey, I'm upset and something's happening and I need to make it stop. They might just go to the method that they feel is most appropriate to make it stop. And the more you punish, generally, and take away those forms of communication, the more problems you're going to have with other behaviors that are, I would consider unacceptable in a dog. Um, like just snapping instead of barking because they're upset about something. And so giving your dog the tools to communicate and giving them permission to communicate is a big part of this. So, and the more you do this, the more you will see your dog's body language and their response. If they're laying on the bed and they go over a noise, it's that 6 months ago they would have had a full-on barking fit. That's huge progress. And because they're still laying on their bed, they're not upset enough to get up and start dancing around the room. So we want to be able to start watching our dogs and what they're doing before, during, and after. And it's totally appropriate if, like, Nick right now is laying on his bed. He's kind of mad at me because I put rec specs on him and he's going to wear them today. But he's laying on his bed, and if I want to encourage this behavior, I will just walk over and I will just drop some treats by him where he can get the treats. And this encourages him to, hey, being on the bed's a good thing, magic treats appear. And then it helps me because it's like, hey, he's on the bed and he likes it and he puts himself there because he knows sometimes magic treats appear. So
Capturing is such a underused way to train dogs.
And it's really important.
That's a whole nother topic.
They don't, when you're rewarding calm or rewarding nothing, they don't have to be on a designated dog bed. If they're laying by the front door and they're just, sleeping, it's perfectly okay to go up and reward that behavior. You don't even have to wake them up. You could just drop some cookies, and when they wake up, they can get their cookies and go, wow, the cookie fairy came while I was asleep. That's perfectly acceptable. And that's actually really rewarding for the dogs, because then they learn that, hey, if I take a nap, that good things happen when I take a nap. I don't have to be hyper vigilant. I can relax. And that, teaching your dog to relax like that, really, really helps bring their energy level down, and it helps decrease the overall barking and helps them access those other noises that they might make, so that they don't have to go onto a full-on bark every time get up, every time some little thing happens, like a door slam or a car comes up the driveway. It's just a matter of letting them know what you want, what's acceptable, and what gets rewarded. And basically anything that's acceptable should get rewarded in some way. And it will really improve your communication with your dog. There's all kinds of stuff that Nick communicates with me now without barking. I mean, he's done things like, when he wants to go out, instead of going to the door and bark like his big sister, he'll grab a shoe and bring it over to me and tell me to put my shoes on so he can go out and go do his business. So things like this will teach your dog that there are other ways to communicate, and will also teach you to communicate with your dog in a way that you'll learn what your dog is trying to communicate, and you'll know when your dog is, way more aroused than maybe they should be, or when they're struggling, and so you can take appropriate steps.
Can I talk about that for just a moment?
Yep.
All right. Just want to think like from the behavioral standpoint, we know that we as humans, like talking is our best language for getting our point across. We hear what other people are saying opposed to what they're doing. We tend to give other people directions verbally, even if it's like typed out, it's still in written word, right? If we send them a text, it's still basically considered a verbal communication because it's using our learned language. Dogs, on the other hand, they can learn our human words. And I mean, some dogs learn a whole huge number of words. They learn our body languages and our emotions first. So the hand signals that we use, that helps humans to kind of focus on doing the same thing to get the behavior they want. So like I have a hand signal for sit. And I mean, it's just putting my hand up, kind of holding it, almost like I'm holding a treat, but there's no treat in there, just a sit. And I can tell my dogs to do that with the word or without the word, but I start that by holding that treat there with a younger dog or a new dog to me and just do that with my hand. And then that helps me do the same signal. So make sure that I'm giving clear communication to that dog until they learn the signal. And then when they learn the signal, then I can add in the cue word that I want to use for the behavior, right? That's kind of what we did with the games this week. And by starting with on day 2, when we went to with the hand target or food lure to move them away, we were giving them a signal of, we need you to come away from this area. We were using us and kind of creating a magnet zone with that food lure or target hand and making them come to us. But our goal was getting them away from the problem area. Away, that distance helps them to calm down faster, right? But we were teaching them that signal, let's move away, getting that idea and thought of moving away brings good things. And then when we added the scatter feed, we were adding a reinforcement method that helps address the dog's actual needs in the moment. And they can't sniff that food out, even if they're not eating it, they can't sniff it out while they're barking, right? So if their nose goes to the floor, they're not barking out the window. And then finally today is where we're going to look at adding that cue word that you're going to use when you want them to stop barking. And so by doing it that way, by going with what they learned first, that body language, that emotional feel of, come on, come engage with me instead. And, let's be happy over here versus let's be upset over there at the window or the door or whatever. We're encouraging them to connect with us so that we're providing the connection they need, the emotional value that they need, and, our emotional framework, of happy mind. And so they're feeling that long before we add the verbal word. So today we want to look at adding that verbal word. And that kind of leads us into, some of you here may know the Tweedle Beetle story, but I've had a lot of people asking me about that lately. And so it is written in Facebook, but to make a long story short, Tweedle Beetles, we get to hear it in action. There was a really weird motorcycle going by, and I mean, that kind of made me jump before she barked. So made me jump again when she barked. But all right. So Tweedle Beetle started with me being frustrated and needing a way to ask Belle to quiet down more quickly, when really I just wanted to yell and scream and pull my hair out because she was frustrating me by barking so much. Barking is her default behavior when she doesn't know what else to do, right? And so I don't know how we got started on it. I'm sure it had to do with Cindy and her poodles. But we got started on the Fox and Socks poem that is Tweedle Beetles. And I'm not going to do the whole poem, but it goes on forever. And it was one of the favorite books that I love to read to my kids. I could have quoted it, but we're in a time hurry today.
Yes.
But it was a favorite story that I love to read to my kids. So it automatically puts a smile on my face. I cannot say that in a stern, angry, grumpy voice. So it ensures that before I interact with my dog, I'm changing my emotional response because that has changed it. And so we did the same process of, Belle already knew how to do the food scatter because we did that a lot. It wasn't necessarily working because I wasn't getting her away from the area all the time like I should have been. So we started back at the beginning, just like you guys, just a couple of weeks ago. Really, I don't think it was even a full month ago, but we kind of started over with this process of getting her away from the area, doing the food scatter, and then adding the cue. And so if she's barking a lot, like if it's somebody is here knocking on the door or something, I can go into a full version of the poem and may not do the rhyme all the way through. You know, I could go Tweedle Beetles, Poodle Paddles, Buttles, Paddles, and just it doesn't matter what I say after the Tweedle Beetles, right? I can just throw out random words. It's the idea of the Tweedle Beetles. And so now, like you just heard, when that motorcycle went by, all I have to do is say Tweedle Beetles, and I instantly have her focus and turning. And even if she's barking mad out the window, she instantly turns around to say, "Where are you delivering my treats?" And I can toss them directly at her. I can scatter feed them on the floor. Like right now, she's laying on the couch kind of behind me, and I want to reinforce the calm. So instead of tossing them on the floor and scattering them and bouncing her, I was just kind of breaking them up and tossing them to her right there. So she was up on that arm when she barked, and that was her normal place to lay down. And so
I'm
that's
going
the Beetle Beetle story. Give me just a
to,
minute, and you can go on. I
well,
just want
this
to
is
say we want to make it something fun that's engaging for everybody. That's something you haven't used previously. Because if you've used come, you've ruined that. If you've used stop it, no barking, stop barking, anything like that, you've ruined that cue for right now because you've used it so much without success. So we want to stop using that cue and move on to another one. Go ahead, Cindy.
I just wanted to add that you want to be careful when you're choosing your cue. Also, the nice thing about Tweedle Beetles, aside from the fact that it's nobody wants to yell Tweedle Beetles because it's not fun. But when you use a cue like Tweedle Beetles or some other poodles eating noodles or something, it's not as it's not as poisonable as if you use the word quiet. So, like, I use the word quiet because I live alone and I'm the one who says it most. But occasionally, Nick will bark when my boyfriend's over, and he has a frustration tolerance issue, and so sometimes the words that come out from his mouth, they're usually not the word quiet, and they're usually a lot harsher than what I would use. So I have intentionally not used a word that he tends to use. He tends to say something along the lines of "shut up" or something along that nature. But be aware of, if you're training this and there's other people around that yell at your dog, use a cue that they're not yelling, that they're not going to yell. Sometimes the more, if you had them, if you use supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, obviously you wouldn't have to say the whole thing every single time. But if you use something like that, they're probably not going to say that the same way. So sometimes unicorn cues, meaning, magical cues that just sound silly and funny. Some of those are the better cues because they're not, for stuff like this, because they're not as corruptible or poisonable as other cues might be. If you have somebody that tends to have a bit less tolerance for barking and might start barking themselves.
My client that we saw videos of earlier in the week, Lana, their cue, before she even came to me for this one, her husband started it, but they use sweet potato pie. You know, the dog
And that,
loves that. And the dog gets called sweetie all the time, so that kind of gets her attention. But so sweet potato pie, and when she's really anxious and it's not working, she adds with Cool Whip on top. And it gets the dog's attention every time.
and I'm pretty sure that some big old tough guy in coveralls and monkey and grease, that does a lot of wrenching, is probably not going to be real excited about yelling in a very stern voice, "Sweet potato pie."
Right.
Um,
You can't say things like that and be angry at your dog.
no, so these are
And try to go for something that's like not going to be
not,
heard in normal day-to-day conversation. Like if you eat apples all the time, you probably don't want to make the cue applesauce if you're talking to people about apples, things like that. So the goal is just make it fun, make it something that's a little bit longer. You know, if it is really, really short, if it's, like come. Short, over. Our dog's ears are not even hearing that because we're saying it so fast before their brain is engaged and listening to us. So make it
And
something a little bit longer. I like at least 3 syllables, whether it's 3 different words or stretched out, but at least 3 syllables to it. That's also why I really like the Tweedle Beetles, because I can make it as long as I need to until I get that attention.
I
A lot
don't
of my
even know
clients are using the Tweedle Beetles now too.
I don't even know where it came from, but I've heard it many times. It's probably just an old myth that dogs can only understand one syllable and only hear the first syllable. That's not true because I've given some cues and I have several cues that start off with either the same word or the same syllable. And your dog will learn enough language that they know, what, like Nick now knows that banana means come. He also knows that a whistle means come, and those generally mean that he's going to get something super high value. So it's worth breaking away from the cat hunt. So it doesn't have to be it shouldn't be a single syllable word. It 3 syllables or more, or 3 short words. Tweedle Beetle Puddle Battle works well. Fox and Socks would work. If you really are curious and want to come up with something original, go to any Dr. Seuss book or Google Dr. Seuss, and I'm sure you can come up with something like the Pale Green Pants with nobody inside them. Or
Well, and Robin's not here today, but I think she's been using the Tweedledee Tweedledum from a nursery rhyme.
exactly. So there's all
So,
kinds of fun, and that just adds to your fun training for something, teaching in a situation that's not fun to deal with. Just
all right,
like,
do you guys want to see the game in action from start to finish?
let's see the
This is our
game.
game of the day, and we kind of moved, from our talking about communication into the game anyways. So here's Val. This is our game of the day. Can you do pause up? Pause up. This is what she would look like if she were barking out the window. Just like that. You guys can kind of see the sun from the window. I'm blocking most of it, but there's the window. And so she would bark out the window. And I would say, Tweedlebeetles, as I'm moving her away and doing that tree scatter. So I mean that when she dropped off camera, she was chasing the trees. So it's a simple, easy. We want to still be using the food lure to move her away. Tweedlebeetles. There, I tossed the food scatter back behind her so she could stay on the camera. And she'll come right back because I stayed here. See, she focused on me, not the window. Pause up. Tweedlebeetles. There you go.
This is a game that, again, should be started when you're not having the issue. So if you're having a calm few minutes, go do it a few times and do that several times a day. When they're calm, doing the reward away and adding the cue, so that as the distraction becomes more irresistible, that they can get away from, they know that the cue will interrupt that distraction.
All right, Cindy, we only have a few minutes left. Do you want to talk about our video tip of the day or do you want me to?
I can. So our video tip of the day is to figure out which media platform works best for you. And all of these have some sort of privacy mode that you can make it. You have to explore the medium. But the tip of the day is to upload your video that you record to the cloud somehow, to the internet somehow. It can be on an app like Facebook or Insta. Sometimes it's fun if you have a service dog to have an Insta page for your service dog so people can see what you're doing with your dog, and that it's not just a pet. They do have to do stuff. So that's one. Or on your Facebook page, you can mark it private. You can always put it in one of our Crazy2Calm groups, and that's a safe spot to put information in. YouTube, you can always upload to YouTube unlisted or private. Private means that only you have access. Unlisted allows you to share it with people. Like, so if I have several videos that I have up that are unlisted, but when I can share them. So I'm in another training group on Mighty Network, and I can share the videos to Mighty Network by just copying paste and pasting the link to that group, but it's what I'm putting up there is often somewhat semi-proprietary, so I don't necessarily want the whole world knowing exactly what I'm doing with the training, because the trainer that I'm taking the course from needs to make the money that she needs to make because it's her program. So I will post those videos that are specific to that class unlisted on Facebook, but I can still share them with the community that is around that training group. So there's lots of ways to do it. The nice thing about storing your videos on the cloud is, you know, what happens if you only have a cell phone and you don't have any other form of media, any other form of interacting with the web, and your all your media is on your phone, and you lose your phone and you can't recover it because it's not backed up to the cloud. What you lose all of that, and rather than lose all those pictures, if you have them backed up like on YouTube or Facebook, you can go back and find those videos. And it also creates a training record. So like if you're working on tasks and you're working on behavior and you have those videos uploaded, if you ever need them for legal reasons, like your dog gets attacked at Walmart and you're suing Walmart, your attorney would be able to go back, both attorneys would be able to go back and look at, they probably would do a deep dive looking for any videos you have posted to either prove your dog is well behaved or is not well behaved. And so that's one of the uses. Yeah, there's a lot of bad uses of video. And that's why I say if you don't want the public to see it, list it as either unlisted or private so that you can keep your security to yourself. Private is more private. Private means only you can see it. Unlisted means that people who you share the link with can see it, at least on YouTube. And
All right.
so
Just a couple of quick limitations and then we have to go. Instagram is only going to allow a 90-second reel. So if you're trying to keep track of training that's been successful, it's a great way to do it. Facebook will allow longer videos. However, if it's longer than 3 minutes, it's going to take forever to upload. And so the perk of YouTube is that there isn't a limit into how long it can be. I think it can be an hour long until you've hit so many followers, and then you can do more than that. But most training videos, we don't train for an hour, so that's not an issue. Then you can copy that link and paste it to Facebook if you want to, or YouTube will also make a short copy for you that's just a little clip that you can then use elsewhere if you want to do that as well. There's also some that are not linked to social media, which would be like, I'm a fan of Google products, so my go-to is Google Photos, which comes with great storage.
there's also
Google
Flickr.
Drive is also an option. There's also ones that are not Google, like Dropbox, and I'm sure Apple has an Apple Cloud.
Apple has a cloud. And then there's also Flickr. And there's a couple other. I mean, if you look, they're there because photographers use them all the time.
So our goal of the day is just pick one, and if you're not sure which one, check with us. We're happy to guide you based on what you're looking to do, but pick one medium. Don't care what it is. It could be something you're already been using, could be something new, and upload at least one of your training videos from this week. Preferably today's video, from today's game. But if it's not today's, we get that just one of your videos from this week, just to practice. You don't have to share it with anybody, but upload at least one video sometime this week to some type of cloud-based thing. And that is it for day 4. Tomorrow we wrap it up with day 5 and bringing it all together.